Go ahead, ask away.
Sure. So, what do you think people get wrong the most about Slab City, and they're surprised when they actually come here? And it's not like they expected.
Well, everybody is forming their own perceptions, and there's hundreds of videos out there. And it is such a diversity of people that live out here. It's pretty amazing how many people. We've got some fine artists, great musicians, but then we have bank robbers, and we have plenty of people who've been in prison, plenty of people that are dodging that. Then we have a lot of military, CIA, NSA people. So it's a whole conglomeration of human beings here. It's very diverse, and that's why I like it so much, because it is diverse. And you guys coming here adds a special ness to it, because you all have different areas of expertise and different things that you're going into. So it's kind of a barometer of seeing what's happening in the world and getting everybody's take on what's happening here on this planet as we go through COVID, as we go through China and what's going on in the Ukraine, and all that.
And people who come here, do you think they're usually happy and they're pleased with their decision?
Here's an interesting one. Someone once asked here, they came here and said, do you think I'm going to be happier than where I lived before? And I said, well, were you happy where you were there? And they said, no. I said, wherever you go, there's where yourself is going to be.
Home is where you make it.
Home is where you make it. That's a good one. You ought to make a joke about that one.
Good.
And, you take yourself with you. No matter where you go, you're going to have your problems where if you're working things out, you're going to be working them out whether you're here or India or Japan, anywhere else. You'll be working them out. Yeah.
Do you feel like this place has become less wild over the past few decades?
No, I think it goes through its cycles of really wildness there, and it's pretty wild right now. It's got a lot of things going on.
Can you describe wild? Because that's been the word to describe this area. For a couple of people that we've talked to, they haven't said anything specific. They just say wild. So what is wild?
I'd say it's like the Wild West in the sense that things are settled here, oftentimes by burning somebody out.
Oh.
You know?
Yeah, we walked by the handlebar that had been burned down to the ground.
Yeah. And oftentimes it's done because there's a misunderstanding or somebody there. There's a lot of people here that are into drugs, and their mental faculties aren't what you would call rational.
Right.
And they'll get ticked off from something that happened 15 years ago, and they'll take it out on somebody else. It might look at you, and you might look like somebody who stole their girlfriend away from them years ago, and then they take it out.
That's the burden of mental illness.
Yes, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people here that have pretty rough lives, and that's when I came here. I was asked by the leading sheriff why I'm here. I said, why did Mother Teresa go to Calcutta, the armpit of the world? I said there's a lot of people who could use some help here. You can add some positive energy here. I grow the garden here, and I got the swimming pool, and I try to help people that come by here until they wear themselves out. They'll come over here and want a jug of water. I'll give them a jug of water. The next day they think that I'm the water supply person. So I said, no. You got to figure out how to get your own water. I'm not gonna run to the store for you. But I'll help out. I'll help out just anybody who needs it within reason if they're respectful.
Do you think Slab City is growing?
I think it should grow. With all the homeless out there, if I was a mayor of a city, like mayor of Venice or mayor of Los Angeles, I'd give everybody, all the homeless there, I'd say, I'd give you a free bus ticket to Slab City. You
That's
go out
fair.
there and find a bush. Go out there. There's no homeless here. You find a bush that's not occupied, put a few rocks around it, and you claim it as your camp. And as long as you don't piss people off, that's going to be your camp. So we don't have any homeless. We're the one place in the world that doesn't have homeless. Really. Isn't that amazing?
No, it's kind of ironic.
Yes, it's kind of ironic that it seemed like, looking at it, it looks like we're all homeless, but basically, anybody who wants to have a little camp can do it. I don't care if it's a 6-foot little place just big enough to sleep in. Yeah.
Do you think there's much cooperation between people in Slab City?
Well, how much cooperation is in the neighbors in your neighborhood where you're living?
I would say, actually, a fair amount. We have a pretty tight-knit, relatively tight-knit neighborhood. But maybe the average neighborhood in the suburbs or an urban area,
Yeah.
not all that much. Yeah, not that much on a local level.
There's cooperation. There's community banks here, and the veterans VA comes here, sets up twice a year, helps the veterans here. I'm a veteran, so they're a big help here. So there's a good bit of cooperation here. And were you here last night for the? Okay, because Builder Bill puts on the range, and that's you've heard about that.
I heard about that. I have a buddy that comes here sometimes, and he likes to play at the open mic.
That's really good. Yeah, and so that's and he's been doing that for 20 some years. So, and so he's been there over there. But it's a good place. It's there's no rent, there's no mortgage, there's no property taxes, and no building restrictions. I could never build that tower in San Diego without going through great lengths and getting permits and hiring civil engineers and doing all that.
Do you think Slab City's ever going to be cracked down on, and those rules and regulations are going to be enforced here?
Well, it hasn't for 70 some years. And when they closed the military base, it was an artillery training ground. And when they closed the base down, they had all these unexploded shells. And they were asked, what shall we do with them? They said, this is 1947 or so. They said, dig a 20-foot hole and bury it and don't tell anybody where it is. And we may be sitting on it right now. So that, and plus the military just dumped their oil, and it was a war effort. There wasn't any environmental protection agency at that time. So they dumped the oils here, and if any developer, and I've developed 2 pieces of property, so if any developer tried to develop this,
Boom.
Repeat that?
Boom.
Well, but they would say you've got to strip off the top 5 feet of this ground and reclaim it and get the pollutants out of it. And that's unaffordable because the town, this whole area, since the Salton Sea went down the drain, this whole area is economically depressed. And I like it that way. You live where it's expensive. They keep raising your property taxes. You know, it's just a struggle trying to make it out there. For your generation, when I grew up, when I was young, we bought our first house in Downey, and it was $14,250. That was affordable. Now that house is probably over $1 million. You know, it's not a great house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. You know, but for you guys to go out and never try to get a home unless you got one on auction like your friend did, you're not going to be able to get $400,000 together. Be able to pay that, or you're locked into a 30-year ball and chain like you wouldn't believe. You know? It's a tough one. I think the market's going to crash there at some point here. We're going to see something even worse than 2008.
So do you, it sounds like when you say you like economic depression, it seems like you would enjoy living in a third world country or something like India. Is the reason that you stay in America to be closer to your family, or are you just, America's your home and you prefer to live here? Is that?
I have a daughter, 2 granddaughters, and 2 great-grandkids, all here, all in the States here. But I would probably be in the Philippines and have built a catamaran there. Probably going to Cebu in the Philippines there. And did pretty good. But I want to see them. I want to see them grow up.
Are they in California?
No, you know, I've got 3 of them are in Hawaii.
Okay.
And the other 3, let's see, 1, 2, and the other 2, my daughter and granddaughter, are in Missouri. They just sold their house in Sacramento and moved to Missouri. There, they got 5 times the property, twice the house for 1/3 of the amount of money.
If you don't mind me asking, is there an injury that you got?
Yeah, I had. That's in my 3rd eye. And that's where I've meditated and focused on. But of all things, I got melanoma cancer there.
Is that in that skin from somewhere else that they covered that up?
Yes, and the story is kind of funny because Steve Jobs had died not too long before that with pancreatic cancer because he didn't go in and get it checked. He thought he could cure it with herbs and a fruitarian diet. And Steve Jobs and I were in India at the same time. But he died of that, and I said, well, I'm not gonna let that happen to me. So I had a sore up here that didn't heal, and it kept getting bigger and bigger. And I tried about 30 different herbs and everything I could. And I said, finally, I'm going down and have a biopsy done. And they got a biopsy, and they said it's melanoma cancer. And I said, I want it out before it spreads to my lymph glands. And so I went to Dr. Tarani there in Apple Valley, and I said, Dr. Tarani, I want this cut out, and I want everything around it that could possibly ever spread again cut out. He says, well, we'll have to do a skin graft. And I said, great, take it off my tush. And he says, why's that? I said, so when I tell people to kiss my ass, they don't have to bend over. But he actually took it off right here where your leg meets your trunk. And because that skin's real soft and it's easy for a graft. But now I have pubic hair that grows out of there. So
Nice.
it's quite of a joke for my grandkids.
That's great.
Grandpa's got to go shave his pubic hair off, you know. That's funny.
Jiv?
But does it grow from the whole region?
Just
Like
a
the
few,
pubic hair,
just
or
a
is it-
few strands. But I got to
Yeah.
cut it off. I do have to cut it. I take the razor. When I trim my beard, I take the razor and go in there.
Do you see any new technologies enabling more people to live in Slab City?
Yeah, well, it does for me, because I'm all solar. I've got about 30 solar panels in there, so I run 3 freezers, 2 refrigerators, air conditioning, big screen television. I get 185,000 movies. So if it wasn't for the technology,
That's a
this
lot
would
of
be
movies.
heck, yeah. So technology has made it possible to be out here and be connected and still have plenty of the comforts that you have.
And do you fear that maybe with climate change it'll become hotter and possibly even unbearably hot in Slab City?
Well, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking my technology, and I have a degree in solar engineering, number one, that my technology is getting better than the climate change. If the climate change is going up, like they say, like it's going to be 2 degrees warmer in 2100, well, shoot, I can handle 2 degrees warmer. Well, personally, I can. I know crops are going to be affected, but we're going to be able to grow grapes in Minnesota, you know, if it warms up. That's not a bad thing. And the earth has always been changing. You know, it's always been changing. Those people think that we're going to stabilize it. There's too many factors in it. It's always going to change, and we've always adapted. And we've got people on this planet living every place, from the Eskimos in the Arctic to the desert sands, and we've always adapted and still been able to raise children and do just fine. There are almost 8 billion of us on the planet now. And the book I've written is about our migration to other planets just to not only take off the load of population that we have, but to make this universe a more interesting place, because as far as we know, we're the highest form of life that's ever existed in this universe.
What do you think about the argument that we're in a population collapse?
I don't think it's an argument. At least it's not an argument for me. It's the birth rate has gone down tremendously. I don't see a collapse. I think a diminishing, especially with the China's one-child policy, has dropped their population. By the year 2100. They're probably going to be down to 600 million as opposed to 1.4 billion, because people don't want to have more babies there. And we're down to about 1.3 replacement here in the United States. Europe is even lower, 1.2. So it's a drop off. Hey, and I don't think it would hurt to drop the population down to 4 billion. billion.
Like Thanos.
But in terms of the population pyramid, given that most older people are not like yourself and able to be spry into their older ages, so when you have an inverted population pyramid where there are more elderly, say in nursing homes, who are unemployed or not employable, and a shrinking pool of employed people supporting them, how do you? Is there? I mean, do you think that's just going to be a disaster? Is there a way to mitigate that? Do you have ideas about that?
I do. I have some great ideas about them. You want to hear it?
Yes.
Number one, you're accumulating knowledge. Yeah. You have gained a lot of knowledge the last 10 years. Have you not?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Well, by the time you're my age, and by the time you're 77, you're going to have a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom. And if people strive to use that wisdom to make the world a better place, as I am doing, and I encourage everybody to do, with that accumulated wisdom, I think we can do a tremendous amount of good here. Because it seems a shame to me to get all of that life experience, all those skills they have, and then die at 80 years old. You know, it just seems if you live to be 120, you got to expand that. Now, of course, when you do that, you ought to raise. When we start raising lifespans of productive years, then raise the retirement age, and so that we don't put the burden on all those young people to supply Social Security and other benefits for old people. Instead, let them work till 80, or if they're going to live to be 110, let them work to 90. You know, productively and pay into the system. It's probably a fair thing to do. But we don't even have to think about that because artificial intelligence and robotics are going to supplant most of the productivity in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna be bringing raw materials in one end of a factory and finished products at the other end, and these robotic lines will go 24 hours a day. They don't need sick time. They don't need health care. They don't need any of that. So in the future, we're going to be so productive. And just that smartphone you have there, 20 years ago we had a brick, you know, and it was really expensive. And now everybody on the planet in Africa has a smartphone. That's how quickly technology takes. So if the workforce is reduced because all the things that we buy, or the majority of things that we buy, are going to be produced automatically with automation, we're going to have an abundance of stuff, and there won't be that many people working. There's going to be people sitting there with computers and monitoring this equipment, but the equipment is going to be doing most of it. Look at Elon Musk's Tesla factories and see how many robots they have in there. And how many people they've displaced.
So what does the life of the average person look like in a world where their labor might not even be economically productive?
Well, if you're seeking, well, first of all, our values, instead of seeking, why don't you sit back a little bit so you're not covering his
Sorry.
face? Yeah.
That's all right.
You know,
You're good now.
he's
My
got
back is
He's just a big guy.
push back support.
repeat that.
So what would the life of the average person look like in a world where their labor might not be economically valuable?
Well, first of all, we're getting healthier. We go back 200 years ago, and the lifespan was about 48 years.
I mean, in the past 50 years, we've definitely been getting less healthy.
Obesity
Yeah, obesity.
and cancer and mental health, depression, anxiety, suicide, drug overdoses, these have increased. And
Infertility.
I guess what I would add on to Ziv's question is that it seems to me that human beings evolved toward purposeful, life-giving work. And if we live in a situation where we recognize what you're saying, that artificial intelligence is doing the jobs that people used to do, or robotics or whatever technology it is, that there is a certain cognitive capacity that is not perfectly a blank slate or flexible, and such that people are born with certain passions. Some people love to work with their hands, and that's just how they're born, and that's a wonderful thing. But in a world where robotics is taking that over, you've almost taken the value and meaning and the life-affirming purpose, in the same way that, you know, sexuality used to be something that was an economic necessity, that if you ran a farm, you had to have children so that you could have people to work on the farm. Sure. You know, if you didn't, you couldn't run a farm as a a childless couple or something like that. That just wasn't economical. But over time, with industrialization now, post-industrialization, it's actually the inverse is true. That because of the burdens of education and healthcare, which is extending lifespans, that it's actually economically doesn't make sense to have children. Now, morally or spiritually, it might make sense, but these kind of create incentives where perhaps our material incentives and spiritual incentives, which were once the same in our ancient past, are now diverging, and people feel like they have to either choose the material or choose the spiritual. It's creating a kind of cognitive dissonance that when I look at young people my age who are very religiously confused, a lot of people I talk to here say they like it because there's a community. There wasn't a sense of community in their hometown, and so they're very alienated and they feel isolated, and they don't necessarily have the friendships that they'd like to have, and so they kind of feel disconnected from other people. And I don't know. That's kind of what I think of when I hear you saying, we're getting less healthier. Sure, lifespans in general have increased, although over the last couple of years they've actually decreased for certain segments of the population. But yeah, I mean, I don't mean to sound very grim with all that and a pessimist, but just to recognize it as it seems like the mainstream way of people doing things. Like you said, there's all these chemicals in the ground here, but that's not particular to Slab City. If you test our water supply, it's filled with antidepressants because we have so many people taking them that's actually leached into the water supply. So we have pollutants, we have big agriculture and food industry putting things in our food that shouldn't be there, that are linked with hormonal imbalances that cause psychological disturbances. So it seems like, yeah, people may be living longer, but
you've hit about 15 different subjects. You want to?
I think they're all okay. I'm just kind of painting a picture.
But let's take one of them first. First of all, the chemicals in the environment.
Yeah.
Number one. Right now, these plastics are a waylay. We developed these, let's call it 30 years ago, were plastics really, 40 years ago, where they are. And they're much better than glass, because I remember growing up having to walk around broken Coca-Cola bottles that could really do damage to your foot. This is an improvement over. It takes far less material than glass. This is going to become biodegradable. This is going to be able to be put in the garden. We're going to want these things to put in our gardens later on because they're going to be made of what we consider nitrogen fertilizer type of good things.
There's a problem with xenoestrogens that exist in other biodegradable materials such as soy. So if you're consuming a lot of xenoestrogenic material, that does change your hormonal profile, and that's, I think, part of the reason why we've had an explosion of non-reproductive sexual identities in the last 20 years that, to me, is ahistorical. We've always had people who have been different from everyone else, but the fact that now you pull young people and it's something 30% or upwards are identifying in this non-standard way, to me, you could say it's an entirely social phenomenon, but I think there has to be some kind of chemical component if we're finding that these plastics actually do have this impact. It seems like it's not going to kill you to drink out of a plastic water bottle, so what's the big deal? But it seems like that small statistical difference when you blow it up over millions or even billions of people does show up in the culture and in the way that we are. I don't know, it seems like people are becoming a little more depressed. I mean, outside of here, where it seems like being depressed almost isn't an option necessarily, but kind of when you can, like I work remotely, so
let's take
it's
this
a different
little
life.
bit. Happiness is a state of mind, and your state of mind can be in any place. And those who have discovered that have said, I'm going to look out here and I'm going to see the beauty of this world. I'm going to see that blue sky. I'm going to see that moon that's going to come up tonight. I'm going to see the wonderful people like yourself who are searching for meaning in their life as a positive thing. Us human beings have this incredible capacity to adapt, and whatever gets thrown there. You were mentioning earlier that us human beings are kind of geared to work. Well, when we were hunters or gatherers, when we found a good supply of food, we'd eat there. We'd have plenty of it, and then we wouldn't have to do much because the food supply was right there. When it got thin, we had to go out and hunt a lot more and do that. So we will adapt to all of that. But there are people that are going to Big Mac themselves to death. They don't have the self-restraint, and that's part of the evolutionary process. They're going to leave the gene pool because they can't deal with the abundance. There's never been a time in the human history that we've had so much to have refrigerators that we can open up and have food from Italy and food from Japan and do all that. And some people just go hog wild because our genetics has said you eat when there's food, and you eat a lot of it because you don't know you may go into a famine next week. So, but those who can adapt to it can say, yeah, I got an abundance of food, but I'm going to eat a good healthy meal, and that's it. And I'm going to get plenty of exercise. And with the amount of knowledge about how to keep your body in good healthy states, you particularly are going to adapt those things and utilize the finest things that technology has to make your life better. You're going to avoid those things that are out there. Try to avoid as many of the chemicals. But these bodies of ours, come on in. We're having a good talk. How are you? What's your name?
Mike.
Hi, Mike. I'm Dr. Spencer. How are you?
Good.
Doing good. Okay. Why don't you look around? We're carrying on conversation here. You got your phone right there. So we're going to adapt to it. And the population is going to go up and down, and we're going to migrate to other planets, and we're going to find beautiful planets out there that are Earth 2.0, something similar to this, and we're going to adapt to those environments. And like we're going, I tell people not to smoke here, whether it's one of those or not.
All
'Cause
right,
this is a
it's
health center.
it's my de-ager.
Yeah, I know. Oh, it's a health thing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I thought it was one of those tobacco things. Is it?
No,
You're not bullshitting
none of
me.
that.
Okay. So, yes, I understand. So don't be so pessimistic. There's a lot of good that's going on. My goodness. And just like going through a field of all different types of plants growing, some of them are going to be hemlock. Some of them are going to give you a bellyache. Some of them are going to be bitter. But some are going to be peaches, and some are going to be apples, and you're going to learn which ones to pick as you go through. And the same thing with life. Pick the good things that raise your spirit up, that raise her. Don't ignore the negative. But I say I watch enough of the news to know when to duck. The world has always been a place of conflict.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been, but it's also been a place of joy. There have been numerous. Go to India, the ashrams there, the incredible thing. Think about all the marvelous things that people have done. Look at all the great art that we've done. Look at the literature. Talk about when people can't find things to do, people adapt. Read the good literature. People will go, gee whiz, I've been wanting to read this, but I was too busy working all the time. Now I can go back. But some people are going to say, my life has no meaning now that I can't go to my 9-to-5 job. I said, well, that's pretty dumb.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree that not everybody's going to make it, and not everybody has to make it.
Yes.
And that's kind of just this assumption that people have had since the post-war boom that, yeah, every single family can afford to have like 4 kids and have their own house, and just this very fleeting moment of prosperity, which has been baked into all of our expectations.
Yes.
But yeah, I also see like people have developed adaptations. So in the past, you could live perfectly according to your intuitions and your instincts, because humans were in a fairly similar environment for a long enough time.
I'm sorry.
For a long enough time, that
God,
what
You could just move
that their
that.
instincts guided them to the
Somewhere else.
most adaptive behaviors.
Yeah.
But now, because the acceleration of technology has changed the way people live so rapidly, our instincts have changed much more slowly.
Yeah.
And so we can no longer trust our instincts. And we have to use these societal, like these social technologies. So maybe something like religion could
I
be
say
argued.
hold on to some of those instincts because they're pretty good. And those
Yeah, for sure.
intuition, yeah.
And then
Yeah,
something
hold
like
on.
going to the gym. Like,
Yeah.
it's not good to be in an office all day, just like under fluorescent lights, sitting down. And so people compensate, they overcompensate by like going to the gym 3 times a week, whatever it is. Whereas like in a state of nature, you wouldn't have to put any conscious thought into this because you would be adapted to your environment, but because our environment has shifted so
No,
rapidly.
you had to put your consciousness into making sure that lion didn't come and get you out of the field over there.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not as it's not really like reflective consciousness. It's not really asking a question. It's just line is there, I run.
Yes.
So, people have different capacities to ask themselves these questions, to experiment, and to just observe their own lives carefully, like where they're going, and just to be very purposeful and plan into the future. So
You brought up 2 points very there. The gay bisexual sort of thing that's opening up. A big part of it's a social sort of thing, and it's attention-getting behavior for a lot of people. Oh, what is your sex? Oh, I'm bi. They get a lot of attention because right now that's the kind of the thing to be sort of thing. They might not really be that bi, or they could be that. But through nature, you go back through nature, and we've had gay people, gay people all through. Greece is just one example. It's always been there, and it probably always will be. But and it's not a big deal. I mean, it's not going to be a big deal. Those people probably not going to have children, and that'll lower some of the birth rate. But again, we're just talking about 8 billion people on this planet. That's a lot of carrying capacity for this little planet. I've been around it 4 times, and there's a lot of people here. But there's a lot of open spaces too. Just fly across the United States and look out the window. You're going to see Denver, and you're going to see Salt Lake City, and a few other large metropolitan areas. But boy, the vast center part of the United States is pretty doggone empty.
I mean, yeah, the limiting factor is not land. Land has always been.
Yeah.
The entirety of the human race can fit inside the state of Texas.
Yeah, you can put everybody on here in Texas and still have them lay down. Yeah, so there. But just Europe was getting pretty crowded about 1492, and what happened? Columbus went and discovered America, and the migration here. Now we have 360 million people here.
But there are also more people in Europe than there were in the year 1500.
What's that?
There are also more people in Europe today than there were in 1500. So
Yeah.
population in Europe also grew.
But it was getting a little crowded for the resources. But people migrated to have to get their own land and do numerous other. And we're going to do that with other planets. And Elon Musk is forging the way first to Mars, which is not a very hospitable place, but it's close enough that we can get to it. In my book, and would you be so kind? You're very bright. Go over to my bookshelf. Go over to see the mannequin over here, the naked mannequin. Go past her, make a right, and go 50 paces. You're going to see you're going to see my bookshelf up there, and you're going to look for my book. It's called The Goldilocks Mission: Man's Next Migration. It should be on it's on one of those shelves. You'll find it. So I wrote a book for just that reason, that this planet's holding capacity is there. We are adding a lot to it. The pollutions that we put on, generating and all that, but that's a stopgap. We're going to have fusion electric. We're going to have solar, and it's going to come down in price so dramatically. In 100 years from now, I believe we'll have an abundance of energy that's not affecting the environment, or at least in a
Look at
very
that
small-
strapping young man.
Yeah, that's the book that I wrote, and that covers a
Dr.
lot about
Spencer
the
William Brown.
Yeah, pass it around. Let them look
Oh,
at it.
I don't
I'm running out of copies. I need to get more printed there, but I'll do that. But that answers a lot of these questions that we've been talking about here, and we're gonna adapt these bodies. We're gonna be able to breathe underwater. That's within 100 years. We're gonna have adaptation of gills. The amount of scientific boosted by artificial intelligence is going to be tremendous.
But not everybody will have access to those genetic technologies.
No, but just like with cell phone, only the wealthy had it 30 years ago. Now, just about everybody. So technology comes down.
But that's because like the frontier of technology is moving, and so, but the wealthy are still always like 50 years ahead or whatever it is.
Well, then get wealthy.
Yeah.
You
No,
don't
for
have
sure.
to be terribly wealthy to afford most of that, and the period of time it takes from the wealthy down to get to the average person is shorter and shorter all the time. It used to, let's say now it just takes two years where a new thing comes out and is very expensive to the time where it's affordable by most of the average person. So those things are happening. And how much abundance can we actually handle? Like right now, I've got a Verizon hotspot here, and I have 185,000 movies to watch. 185, along with YouTube, Hulu, and HBO, and Showtime, you name them. I've got it, and that's all affordable. It used to be you go to a movie cost you $6. It probably cost you 8 or 10 to go to a movie theater. Now, I get all those movies on here for $14 a month. So that you think about that. but how much can I consume of that? I can only watch a couple of movies today, and if I have company like you, I don't watch any, you know? So how much abundant, we have more information coming in just to Google anything, we can find it. My mechanic over here, he, he ran into some problems there. I said, go to YouTube. And he goes to YouTube and I showed him exactly how to do it, you know, how to take off the carburation situation. So he's done that. So we're living in a marvelous time. If we think about all the good things and don't focus so much on all the negative, correct the negatives and do what you can to make the planet a better place. Like I grow lots of food here as organically as possible. People come here and they see I'm using Miracle Grow or something. And they said, oh, that's not pure organic. And I said, well, take a breath. Take a deep breath right now. How much of that breath is pure organic? We don't have pure. And whatever pure organic, black widows and rattlesnakes are organic. My goodness. There's things in nature that will kill you that are absolutely natural. So that's not a good criteria. There's things that man has made that has been great. Polio vaccine, take it for one, and millions of other things. And we live in a wonderful society. There's plenty of room for improvements. But you look at the pollution with all these things. We got an area the size of Texas in the Pacific Ocean of all this floating plastic. Well, send a big barge out there and using solar because it's in there with lots of solar, and melt this stuff down and make park benches and other things at it and go around selling those in Singapore and all around the world and do that and recycle that stuff. Do that. That's a great project. That's
I
probably
think the issue right
multi-million-
now with recycling plastic is that there are different grades and types
Yes,
of
sir.
plastic.
What
and
I'm saying, you heat this up to 600 degrees, and you could do that with solar, and you took it down to a mush like that, and then you squeeze it into a big press and a die, and you smash it in there in a die, and you make a park bench out of it. It doesn't matter what the stuff is. It'll once it's liquefied, you can put it in there. But they're trying to break it down individually into any of these things to reuse it. But you can make so many products out of it. Roofing shingles, name it. There. Building blocks, those cinder blocks that you put together out there. Look at how many blocks you can make out of this stuff. And this stuff is basically biodegradable. It'll last for 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, probably longer than those blocks will. So there's all kinds of, and there's solutions to every problem we have. There's a
Well, then,
solution for it.
Those solutions cause new problems, though.
But of course, every time we went out and fished, we depleted some of the fish. It isn't that every action you have, every breath you take has used up some of the oxygen on this planet. And that's part of the cycle of life. We're going to constantly do that. But we're getting smarter and smarter, and we're able to do more things with the materials that we have now. We're doing enough to keep more people have come out of poverty in the last 20 years than any time in human history. And that's fantastic. Part of that was the global economy, and part of that is raising the standard of living and through technology and with the advent of the internet. Because my water guys are there, they're going to make one last load here today, and that'll be enough for a while. So everything is challenge yourself to find solutions to these problems. And many of these things that we talked about that are negatives are an opportunity to find a solution. And if you're the one who finds a solution and builds a business around that, you will become wealthy and you'll be able to buy that first technology when it comes out and try to keep it from the rest of us. Because we're all going to want it, and then there's going to be people that say, that's a great technology. I know the masses would buy that, so I'm going to produce it cheap enough so the masses can have it. But we live in a great time. This is fantastic. And I've seen it. Our family was the first one on the block that had a television set. And it was a little Philco thing like this. And you had to get up and have 3 stations, NBC, ABC, and I don't know one other one. So life has gotten so much better. You know what raised the level of education in the world? The wash machine. If you've ever seen women take a load of wash down to the river and pound that on the rocks, with soap and pound it, that's a whole day of hard work. When wash machines came out, put it in the wash machine, put some soap in there and turn that thing on, and and 40 minutes later, you throw it in the dryer or hang it up, and clothes are done. That gave women the time to sit down with a book with their kids and read to their kids. That did more for education than anything else. Just think what refrigeration has done.
Mhm.
My goodness, before food would spoil in 3 days, that was it. I mean, you could keep beans and grains for a long time if you could keep the rats out of it and the mice. But
I agree with you on pretty much all this stuff about these technologies are like very good, they're
Sure.
great advances in human life. But still, like, the people in the most developed countries are becoming fatter and sicker and more depressed by the
are
year.
you fatter and sicker?
No, he's the
Okay.
exception, though.
Okay,
I mean,
exception.
I
But
think
you're an
I think
exception.
individuals have a greater capacity to live a good life than ever before.
Yeah.
If you can make that choice,
Yeah.
you can live an intentional life. Like, there's no reason why 70% of Americans would have to be fat.
Yeah.
They could make different decisions and not be fat.
Yeah, why don't they?
I would say it's just a lack of knowledge, or, they're just.
Oh, they've been told that Big Macs and
I'm going to have to
and
disagree.
sugar-
I'm going to have to agree with the doctor because I think the knowledge is not the problem. I think the problem is a problem of will, and I think it's these are deep senses of guilt and like good
low
and
self-esteem.
evil.
Low
Yeah,
self-esteem.
identity.
They don't think they're good enough to do it. Hey, let them fat. They're going to just get diabetes and die. And my goodness, what does that leave? It leaves the healthy people, doesn't it? And that's always been the case. Always the survivors, those who had the gumption to say, no, I'm not going to have that third helping. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because my body tells me when I stuff myself, I don't feel good. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm going to use my will force to not do that. And so let's say it's only 10% of the population. It wouldn't be better if there was the 10% who survived and then went on to propagate more people and give them the education to do that. Let them die off. Let people who don't. I look at there. I've never put a quarter in a slot machine. I've never gambled in Las Vegas. I go in there and I said, how damn dumb do you have to be told that this casino lights up all these lights, puts all this in, because they get the money because the house has the advantage. How stupid do you have to be to play it when you know that if you play it long enough, you're going to lose? What kind of stupidity is that?
I
But
don't know
you
that
look
it
at
is stupidity because I know people who are very intelligent who still make those same mistakes, and I also think part of what you're creating a connection between sexual reproduction and life outcomes, which in the past would have been true, but I think because of our medical technologies and the situation in life where you don't have to do manual labor, you can throw it in the washing machine, and so someone can be severely obese and at the same time have more children than someone who is making all the right choices, and so there is not a perfect correlation between.
No, there isn't, and there's never going to be a perfect correlation. There doesn't have to be a perfect correlation. Some people are going to make wise decisions, and some aren't. And some dumb people in Appalachian who marries their first cousin are going to have 6 kids. They're going to populate things like crazy, and that's going to happen. And so you're going to have 90% of some of the people that are really pretty dumb.
I'm gonna go get a shower.
All right, good for you. You're starting to smell a little bit, I know.
I'll get my pit.
All right, get to your pits. Don't come back till you got your pits done. So the world's always going to change. My goodness. A funny thing I was thinking about is Genghis Khan. Remember when Genghis Khan used to come into Central Europe and he used to rape and pillage? And I was thinking of some woman there. She's 35 years old and she'd been with that same old dull farmer working on there, and she looks out and she goes, God, when is Genghis going to come and rape and pillage again? I'm getting so damn bored. Can you imagine that guy? I'd love to make a movie like that. You're watching this family, and you see this old farmer there, and he's probably 20 or 30 years older than the woman because they married some younger women. And she's going, my God, I haven't been laid properly in such a long time. I wish Genghis would come here. Because when they came in there, and they came in on kind of a cycle of about 11 years. Did you know that? They'd let these farmers build up.
$20 on that receipt.
What's that?
Can I get $20 on that receipt?
Sure.
I'm gonna run the count that and get the burrito.
Okay. Do that.
You want anything?
I don't. Oh, you know what? You can get some ice.
Shy guys, sure.
Would you get some ice?
Sure.
There you go. Okay. And
Hey guys, good job on the sign.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
yeah. So
See ya.
Genghis Khan.
11-year cycles?
Yeah, 11-year cycle. He'd wait until they would build up the crops and get the hogs and the sheep raised and all that, and they'd come in and just harvest it. The farmers would harvest every year, in the fall. Genghis would come every 11 years, rape and pillage. But after they came in there, that was a long ride. They came there and they drank the blood off their horses. Did you know that? They
Yeah.
drank the blood off the horses there. That gave them that extra protein, and they drank the milk of the horses. And they are not lacto
Lactose intolerant.
Yeah, they can handle. That's one of that they can do that. So they had that extra protein to come in there. But when they came in there, they knew these farmers basically they would go and hide for the most part. Maybe a few of them had some sickles and would try to do some, but they were easily wiped out by guys on horses. So it wasn't a big fight to go in there. It wasn't like I don't think it was good. They came in there and a few would resist, but I think most everybody threw down their farming tools and ran. And they probably chased some of them there, but most of them got off their horses, found a woman, took her to a hayloft, and just had sex. It could have been pretty violent, but it didn't have to be, because most of these women knew there was no. If they fought, they'd probably get killed or hurt. And you think of how many women got impregnated through the centuries, and do you know that Hungary has a language that's similar to Korean? And you know that kimchi in Hungary is one of the main diets. And kimchi is a cabbage, fermented cabbage. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. That would be a fun movie. There's a comedy to make. Genghis Khan coming in, and all these women are going, Genghis! We're so glad you came. We haven't been raped and pillaged in the longest time, man.
Do you think it's possible for something like that to happen in the 21st century, that there is some kind of a military force that through maybe a new technology is able to wipe out competitors and instantiate that kind of a warrior class system that Genghis had, or you could say Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar?
But it would be high tech, and we got the neutron bomb that just kills people and leaves all the buildings.
Do you think there will be use of those neutron bombs within the century in warfare?
Anything's up. You can flip a coin either way. Anything could happen. Who would have thought 20 years ago that SpaceX would have a launching vehicle that could actually land after it took off? What a boost to technology that. Who would have thought 30 years ago that we'd have the internet where we could go on our phone and talk to somebody, anybody, anywhere in the world? I mean, almost all this stuff, going back 100 years ago, people would think you're crazy if you thought you would do it. The Wright brothers, 1903, the first ones to fly. 66 years later, we put a man on the moon. So all of this is possible. Anything could possibly happen. And probably the things that'll happen will probably be something we weren't even expecting. Like this COVID that happened 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago now. If you would have said something, we're going to have a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic, people would say, oh, you're crazy. That happened. But it happened with the Spanish flu in 1918. But anything can happen tomorrow. Anything can happen. Right now, I'm looking at the real estate market in China. It's collapsing. There's so much graft and corruption there. Those people at the banks took off with the money, and they can't. The depositors are trying to get their money out, and they can't get. By the tens of thousands, they're lining up at the banks, can't get money from it. The bank is closing, and this stinking communist government, we put that on the tape, stinking communist government changes their COVID thing from green to red, meaning if you go to protest, they immediately say that you've got COVID and that you cannot be out in public and you're going to be quarantined. That's how they're using that technology to stop demonstrations. Isn't that terrible? Now that's a big, if you want to have something to fear, hope that the technology doesn't get to that point, that it has the ability. Like in Canada, the truck drivers struck up there and started doing it, and the Canadian government blocked the truck drivers' bank accounts, so they couldn't get the money out. Now that is a scary thing, when because you're not in agreement with their political ideas, they can cut you off from your financial funds. Now that's another thing. That's why you saw me just hand him cash. Put some cash in your pockets. If you got money in an ATM, because In Russia now, in China, there are people that can't get money out of their what we know as ATMs.
I mean, they can phase out cash though. They can just make it totally paperless.
They can, but if people keep using it, they can do a lot of things. We can all get screwed. There's no doubt about it, you know. But would we be more screwed than 1929? You know, in October 1929, when the whole system collapsed, the banking system, you had money in the bank, you went there, and you couldn't get any money out. You know? People were jumping out of buildings. Can you imagine what it would take for you to jump out of a 60-story building?
I don't have enough money. So
I know,
justify that.
but you would think if you had a couple of $1 million. Well, look at this guy in Germany. He had $6 billion. He lost $1 billion. He went and threw himself in front of the subway train. So it's psychological.
Yeah, I
Psychological.
guess I think maybe something I would take from saying is that so there's kind of like two options. There's a centralizing force which you see in China and Russia. You point out Canada. I would also list New Zealand, and I would even list America as examples where governments have used crises as an opportunity to centralize their power.
Absolutely. Don't let any good crisis go to waste.
So
Try to use it for your political
there's
end.
kind of two approaches to that. You can either say, this is a really bad thing, and so I'm going to move to Slab City, or I'm going to go completely cash, or I'm going to do things to decouple myself from the and try
Yeah.
to be
Let's
estranged. from
not go to either string. Let's say don't decouple, just put away enough aside so if it cover all your bases. If the system goes down, have enough cash. Well, cash. If you walk in there and your card won't go through, and you've got a basket full of groceries, you can pull it, and you have cash. You can pull out cash and say, "I'll pay you in cash."
Do you have any cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin?
Sure, I have 23 cryptocurrencies now. I bought Bitcoin when it was $400.
Okay.
I sold about 85% of it when it got to 17,000.
Mhm.
It's at 23,000 right now as of
Right.
today.
So,
It could fall on its face tomorrow, or it could go to $1 million, $100 million. We don't know, but I'll take a shot at it.
Right. So basically, what you're saying is, cryptocurrency is not really rock solid. It's an investment like anything else. It has risk associated. What would you say like physical land is the best stable investment as far as like, you know, if the federal government truly collapsed, people wouldn't really even care about cash necessarily. I mean, I guess
let me
there's
check. I
certain
know
they
you're
wouldn't
going-
care about deeds either. Because
well,
those deeds are enforced by the federal government,
I know.
right?
Right.
Listen, diversify. Own some land, own some crypto, own some gold, own some silver. Have a bunch of cash go across the board.
Okay.
It's a hodgepodge as what's going to happen. None of us can predict what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
have a bunch of things out there, and some of them are going to go up, some are going to go down, and oftentimes they balance out.
Yeah.
Get as many skills as you can. Keep your head clear. Stay away from drugs. Over here you watch. See some of these people they've damaged in the world. They've damaged their consciousness to where they can't make good decisions anymore. Your ability to be in the here and now, right now, and respond to your environment is the most important thing that you've got right now. If things start to go haywire in you, your ability to adapt to a quickly changing environment is going to be what assures your survival.
Yeah. So, one more thing I want to say, before, then we should probably get a move on. There's
Yeah.
more of Slab City we want to see before sunset. But the thing about cash, or cryptocurrencies, or real estate, or any form of value that isn't tangible,
It's like
is-
liquid.
No, it's that there really is no decoupling from the system ultimately, because the only reason people accept this intangible good and like imbue it with value is because it's backed up by a system.
Well, it's because in the consciousness of the masses,
Mhm.
it's recognized, and we all agree $100 bill will buy you a grocery cart of food or something.
Yeah.
So, and that's agreed upon, and we all use it. And thank good for that, because I'd hate to carry around bags of wheat and try to barter with it, or something. So it is, but it's an illusion. It's basically
Yeah, but-
an illusion that people grapple to. Go ahead.
But using cash doesn't protect you from being decoupled from the system.
No,
It's a
nothing
limited
protects
measure,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, nothing complete. But if you spread out you spread out a number of things. They say, I don't want cash anymore, it's not good, but I'll take your silver.
Mhm.
You know, so get some silver dollars. Go to Vegas. That's what's one thing. Go to Vegas, get
Own
silver
some
dollars.
gold bars in Slab City.
Well,
Yep.
gold bars are going to be hard.
How many got buried
an
around
ounce-
here?
What's that?
How many gold bars you got buried around here?
Well,
That's secret.
how
Private
much would
information.
how much would you pay me to know?
Uh,
And if you would pay me more than what I have, I will tell you. And I wouldn't have them here. I have a way of
Yes,
putting away things that nobody could possibly find unless they were really psychic, and I haven't found a psychic well enough to do that. So,
Yeah, but that was a running joke. I said, I bet there's someone in Slab City who has a bunch of gold bars lying around. So maybe.
I know a woman here. She died here, and she was reported to have a bunch of silver. And it went. She buried it somewhere. I don't think she told anybody. But hey, we'll see you later. Hey, it's been absolutely a stimulating afternoon. I hope you've learned something. I sure have. Yeah.
Thanks for speaking
All
to
right.
us, Dr. Spencer.
All right. Take care. Come back. Yeah. Come
Thank
back.
you,
Yeah.
sir.
Until next time.
All right, we're gonna do
Appreciate it.
that.